cruelest trick? Your mind has convinced you that waiting is loyalty. But what if waiting is actually just fear wearing love's clothes? We call it attachment. We romanticize it as devotion. We tell ourselves that if we hold on long enough, the other person will eventually wake up and see what they're throwing away. This is the fiction we feed ourselves at 2 a.m. when we replay old messages and search for clues that we mattered. But here is what Carl Jung observed beneath the surface. Attachment is rarely about the other person. It is a transaction between you and a version of yourself you haven't met yet. You are not clinging to them. You are clinging to the version of you that felt alive when they looked at you. And if that version of you no longer exists, if they walked out and took that reflection with them, who are you now? That silence is not emptiness. It is the beginning of orientation. We need to stop asking, how do I forget them? And start asking, what part of myself did I lend them without realizing it? Because Jung knew something that modern self-help often misses. You cannot lose something that was never yours, but you can lose yourself in someone else's mirror. The first trap is the story. Every attachment we refuse to release comes with a narrative. We are all novelists when it comes to our pain. We write endings that haven't happened yet. We revise the past to make it bearable. We tell ourselves that if we just understand them better, forgive them more completely, wait longer, shrink smaller, they will return. But what if the story you're writing has a ghost as the main character? Jung would say that the psyche does not distinguish between what is real and what is deeply felt. To your nervous system, the hope of their return is chemically identical to their actual presence. This is why you cannot think your way out of attachment. Logic does not dissolve bonds that were woven in the marrow. You cannot reason yourself into freedom. You can only outgrow the cage. What if the reason you cannot stop thinking about them is not because they are exceptional, but because you are exceptionally loyal, and you have misplaced that loyalty? Let's look at the architecture of projection. When you love someone who does not return that love, you are not actually seeing them. You are seeing a screen onto which you have projected your unmet needs, your unlived life, your undeclared worth. Jung called this the anima and animus, the inner image we carry of the perfect counterpart. But here's the problem. You are not in love with them. You are in love with what they activated in you. And if they never truly saw you, how can they be responsible for your healing? This is where detachment stops being a task and starts being a homecoming. You have been looking for yourself in their eyes, but their eyes were never a mirror. They were a window into someone else's world, and you were never meant to live there. The second trap, you believe that letting go means admitting it was meaningless. This is the silent contract we sign with pain. We hold on because to release feels like a betrayal of how deeply we loved. We think, if I move on, I'm saying it didn't matter. But Jung would counter that the opposite is true. Meaning is not preserved by stagnation. It is metabolized through integration. You can honor something by outliving it. The oak does not dishonor the acorn by becoming a tree. It simply stops being what it was. The acorn did not fail. It succeeded by transforming. Your past self loved courageously. That version of you did not make a mistake, but that version of you is also not qualified to navigate where you are going. Do you trust the person you were 6 months ago to make decisions for the person you are becoming today? We also need to address the shame. Shame is the glue of dysfunctional attachment. It whispers, if you were enough, they would have stayed. This is the most seductive lie the psyche tells. It gives you the illusion of control. If the fault is yours, then you can fix it. You can become more attractive, more understanding, more patient, more invisible. You can edit yourself into someone they might choose. But you were never the draft. You were always the finished work they weren't ready to read. Jung observed that the shadow often wears the mask of self-improvement. We convince ourselves we are working on ourselves so we can be ready when they come back. But that is not healing. That is renovation for an occupant who moved out. The mirror does not lie, but we are experts at looking away. Every person who enters your life holds up a reflection. Jung wrote that we meet ourselves in others. What you admired in them, their confidence, their ease, their ability to leave without looking back, these are not external virtues. They are disowned parts of your own psyche waiting for repatriation. You didn't fall in love with them. You fell in love with the version of you that felt safe enough to admire someone else. Ask yourself, what did they have that you have been afraid to cultivate in yourself? Was it the ability to say no? Was it the refusal to apologize for existing? Was it the freedom to leave without explanation? You didn't want them, you wanted permission, and you thought they were the only one who could grant it. What if the person you've been waiting for isn't coming back because you're supposed to become them? This is the pivot that Jungian psychology offers that pop psychology avoids. Detachment is not passive resignation, it is active reclamation. You are not waiting for closure, you are waiting for jurisdiction. You are waiting for the moment you stop appealing their absence and start governing your own inner territory. Closure is not given, it is declared. You do not need them to acknowledge your pain for it to be real. You do not need them to apologize for you to stop carrying the weight of their indifference. The court of your own being has already ruled. The verdict is not pending. You just haven't read it out loud yet. Let's talk about the silence. Many people fear detachment because they think it will feel like a death. And in a way, they are right. Something does die, but it is not love. It is the expectation that love must look a certain way to count. Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That is what detachment asks of you. Not to stop caring, but to stop caring more about their approval than your own integration. What dies is the version of you that believed survival required their attention. The third trap is the myth of replacement. We think we need to find someone else. We think the antidote to one person is another person. We scroll, we distract, we allow new people to hold the parts of us we haven't learned to hold ourselves. Jung would call this the eternal return of the same pattern. If you do not reclaim the projection, you will simply reproject. Do you want a new person, or do you want to stop being a person who needs someone else to feel real? This is why time alone is not punishment. It is quarantine. It is the period where you stop infecting new connections with old wounds. You stop looking for surrogate parents, surrogate saviors, surrogate gods. You stop outsourcing your selfhood. Jung distinguished between persona and self. The persona is the mask you wear in relationships. It is the version of you that is agreeable, that doesn't make demands, that understands when they cancel, that forgives before an apology is offered. This persona is not false, it is partial. It is a slice of you that you learned was acceptable. But you have never been a slice. You are the whole fruit, and someone else's palate does not determine your ripeness. When you detach from someone who does not love you, you are not losing a relationship. You are retiring a persona. You are saying, I will no longer perform smallness to accommodate someone else's inability to see me. Individuation is the word Jung used for this. It is not self-improvement, it is self-assembly. It is gathering the scattered pieces of yourself that you left in the custody of former lovers, former friends, former hopes. It is realizing that you do not need to be completed. You need to be consolidated. Individuation is lonely because during it, you are not yet ready for company. You are in the workshop, not the gallery. People will mistake your solitude for bitterness. They will ask you if you're okay. They will suggest you get back out there. But you are not hiding. You are annealing. You are the blade being folded in the fire, and you cannot be useful until you are finished. Why are we so quick to rush people out of the forge and back onto the battlefield? Let's look at resentment. Resentment is often mistaken for detachment. You tell yourself you don't care anymore, but you still check their profiles. You still flinch at their name. You still rehearse conversations they will never attend. Jung would say this is not detachment, it is attachment with a negative charge. Hatred is not the opposite of love. Indifference is. And you are not indifferent. You are inflamed. True detachment is not cold. It is not hostile. It is not a fortress you build to keep them out. It is a garden you cultivate that they were never qualified to tend. The fence is not to imprison them. It is to protect the perennials. We have to talk about the empty chair. In Jungian therapy, there is a method where you speak to the empty chair. You project the person onto the space, and you say everything you never said. It is a confrontation with the internal image, not the external person. You do not need to send the letter. You need to write it. The psyche hears what the conscious mind articulates. When you name your disappointment, your longing, your fury, you are not talking to them. You are informing your own nervous system that the account is closed. The check has been written. You do not need them to cash it for it to clear. This is where the fear arrives. What if I never love again? This question is not about love. It is about identity. You have associated your capacity to feel with your capacity to attach. You think that if you are not attached to someone, you are not alive. But Jung would observe that the caterpillar does not ask, "What if I never crawl again?" It trusts the dissolution. What if the love you're afraid of losing was actually the scaffolding and the building is only now visible? Emptiness. We run from it. We fill it with noise, with work, with casual intimacy, with nostalgia. We treat emptiness as a leak, something to be patched immediately. But Jung saw emptiness differently. He saw it as the prerequisite for new content. The cup does not receive new wine by clutching yesterday's vintage. You are not empty because something was taken. You are empty because something has been cleared. These are not the same state. One is injury, the other is preparation. You get to decide which narrative governs the space. The what if loop is the mind's addiction. What if I had said something different? What if I had been more patient? What if they come back next month? What if I never meet anyone else? Jung would diagnose this as possession by the thinking function. You are trying to solve an emotional problem with cognition. It will never work. The psyche does not respond to debate. It responds to presence. You cannot think your way out of a feeling you haven't felt all the way through. The only way out of the loop is to stop treating the past as a problem to be solved and start treating it as a landscape to be witnessed. You don't have to fix it, you have to feel it. And then, without announcement, the loop loses its voltage. Let's discuss dignity. We often associate dignity with stoicism. We think moving on means never crying, never remembering, never feeling the catch in your throat when a song plays. Jung would reject this. Dignity is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to let emotion dictate your orientation. You can cry and still leave. You can mourn and still unfollow. You can love them and still never speak to them again. Dignity is not forgetting. It is remembering without obeying. Why have we decided that healing requires amnesia? Now we arrive at the question you came here to answer. How do I actually do this? Not the philosophy, the execution. Jung would say that you do not defeat the complex by fighting it. You starve it. You stop feeding the projection with your attention. Every time you check their profile, you are donating your energy to a ghost economy. Every time you imagine their reaction to your success, you are voting for their relevance. You do not need to block them. You need to block the version of yourself that still seeks their approval. This is not punishment. This is energetics. You cannot fill your own cup while you are still pouring it into a grave. The second execution step. You must stop telling the story. You know the story. It is the narrative you rehearse to friends, to therapists, to yourself in the shower. It has a beginning, a middle, and a never-ending present tense. You are the protagonist, but the antagonist has already left the script. Jung observed that neurosis is suffering without meaning. But when you repeat the story, you are not seeking meaning, you are seeking an anesthetic. The story does not heal you, it hypnotizes you. What if for 1 week you refused to tell the story? Not because you are suppressing it, but because you are no longer employed as its archivist. The third step, you must let the new self become uncomfortable. You will not recognize yourself at first. You will feel untethered. You will miss the weight of the chain because your muscles have adapted to its drag. Jung called this the disorientation of growth. Freedom, at first, feels like falling. What if the dizziness you feel is not loss, but the head rush of standing up too fast after years of kneeling? This brings us to forgiveness, not the kind you offer them, the kind you owe yourself. You have been angry at yourself for loving someone who couldn't love you back. You have called yourself naive. You have promised to never be that vulnerable again. Jung would call this shadow rejection. You are rejecting the part of you that dared. But that part of you is not the enemy. It is the scout. It went ahead into hostile territory and reported back. It did not fail. It performed reconnaissance. Forgive the scout. Without them, you would never have known where the border was. You are not foolish for loving. You are foolish only if you refuse to believe the intelligence report. The final phase, return. Jung wrote about the hero's journey, but he also wrote about the return. The hero does not stay in the underworld. They bring something back. They bring the elixir, the wisdom, the healed wound. You are not detaching so you can become numb. You are detaching so you can become useful to yourself and eventually to others. The healed are not those who never broke. They are those who let the cracks become inlets. When you stop seeking love outside of yourself, something paradoxical happens. Love finds you, not because you are finally ready, but because you are finally full. You are not leaking need from every interaction. You are not scanning conversations for confirmation that you matter. You are not performing receptivity while quietly negotiating abandonment. You are just there. Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances, but the first personality you must meet is your own. So meet yourself. Not the self you were when they loved you, not the self you became when they left, not the self you are trying to be so they'll return, just the self that has been waiting in the quiet, patient, whole, unharmed. That self does not need them. That self does not need this video. That self already knows. And that self is the one that will press play on the next chapter. If this reflection met you exactly where you are, I want to ask you to do two things. First, take a breath. Not the shallow breath of anxiety, the deep breath of recognition. You just spent nearly an hour in the company of your own depth. That is not nothing. That is the work. Honor it. And if you believe in the mission of Winds of Thought, if you believe that philosophy should not stay locked in books, but should walk beside you in the ordinary hours of your life, then I invite you to make it official. Hit the like button. Not for me, for the algorithm. Because when you validate content that calls you toward integration rather than distraction, you train the system to bring more of this to more people. Your thumbprint is a vote for the kind of consciousness you want to see multiplied. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I invite you to do that now. Not because I need the number, but because you need the anchor. This channel is a harbor for people who are tired of performing certainty. It is a library for those who know that healing is not a destination, but a practice. Winds of Thought exists because people like you decide that thinking deeply is not escapism. It is the most practical thing you can do. Ring the bell if you want to continue this conversation. Not every video will land on your homepage unless you tell YouTube that this is not background noise. This is your curriculum. Now, the pinned comment. I'm going to ask you something there. I want you to answer honestly, not for performance, but for your own clarification. What is one belief about love that you inherited from someone else, and are you ready to give it back? Take a moment, write it down. You might free someone else just by naming it. And finally, the quote. The one you might screenshot, might save to your camera roll, might send to a friend who doesn't know they need it yet. You are not waiting for them. You are waiting for yourself to return. Letting go is not losing love. It's freeing it from a cage. You have everything you need. Not more information, not another perspective, not permission from someone who already left. You have the verdict. You have the jurisdiction. You have the door. The only question is not whether you can let go. The question is whether you are willing to stop using their absence as an excuse to postpone your own arrival. Thank you for being part of Winds of Thought, not for listening, for becoming.